OSR stands for Old School Renaissance. It's essentially this idea that modern games are quite different from old games, in particular the ones that were around at the dawn of the hobby, and that's meaning AD&D or D&D Basic. Like the editions of Dungeons & Dragons that existed in the 80s and the 90s. And there's a group of gamers that want to go back to that older style of play, and they are all making different systems for it. Many of them are playing each other's systems. They are taking bits from one system and adding it into their own, and it becomes this sort of a network of a certain style of play, a certain way of thinking about system design or character design, with the goal of creating systems that reward a certain type of gameplay. And I don't think of myself as an OSR player, and I don't think of myself as any kind of authority on what OSR is. And in this video, I'll recommend to you creators that are better suited to explaining it to you on their own terms in terms of how they engage with the hobby. I am very much a modern 5th edition D&D player. But if you are as well, then I can at least explain to you how I understand it from talking to people who like the OSR and from the various OSR rulebooks that I have bought and read, and I can talk you through what they're like and which ones I like and how they work, so that you might get a better idea of, if you want to get into the OSR, where should you start? Welcome to Mystic Arts. My name is Daði. I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for 11 years. Let's start by defining our terms a little bit, because there are loads of new games coming out, and they are not all OSR. For instance, both Drawsteel and Daggerheart are very much not OSR games. They are thick, hefty rulebooks that are all about challenging your characters and making epic fights and drama, about cinematic combat or fun combat, and that is not OSR. I think these games are very cool, I think they're very interesting, but they are also very different from, if you were to compare them, just in terms of scale and size, if you were to compare them to a typical OSR game. Even the sort of archetypical one, Shadowdark, which has a fairly hefty rulebook, it is still a fraction of the size of these things. So we're going to take these books and we're going to put them aside for now. From what I understand about the OSR, and again, I'm not any authority on the subject, it basically comes down to three things. One, does it contain a certain sense of nostalgia, even if it's nostalgia for an era of gaming you were never a part of? If yes, then I think it's certainly OSR. Especially if it's trying to bring that nostalgia into a modern outfit. A lot of these old games from the 80s and 90s had kind of janky game design. I think TRPG game designers are better game designers now than they used to be. I think game design as an idea tends to move mostly forward in one direction. So if you take the ideas of those old games and you synthesize them down to a simpler rule set, you get closer to simulating how they are meant to be played. So if you capture that nostalgia, I think that's absolutely OSR. Number two is the idea that you can run old modules in them. Basically, if you can run the original Keep on the Borderlands largely unchanged in this system, it's basically OSR. And third, I think this is most important, does the game challenge the characters or the players? If it's the players, it's more closer to being OSR. A game like Drawsteel is all about making your epic characters fight epic monsters, and that is very different from the intentions of a game like Old School Essentials, which is essentially all about trying to go through dungeons, and the dungeons are tricks and they're scary, and the players have to be clever to take them on. In Drawsteel, there is tactics, but you're not terribly likely to die horribly in an instant on account of having made a tactical blunder. Whereas in OSR games, life tends to be cheap, and that's usually by design. But I think there's also a flip side to the nostalgia that games like this are all about. And if you've spotted the glow-in-the-dark book behind me, I'm talking about games like Morkborg. Morkborg? I don't know, it's Swedish, but I can read this in Icelandic, so I don't know what to do about that. I think this is the difference between OSR nostalgia and OSR punk, and I think it's a spectrum. But then again, whenever you're like putting categories into things or naming different groups that something belongs to, you often find yourself ascribing properties to things from the outside inwards, which can lead to some weird confusion, or maybe just a weird way of thinking about things. But that's helped me approach the differences between the many game systems that I'm seeing. Another thing that's usually hugely popular in OSR style games is the idea that your characters are disposable. And they do this through a number of ways. Number one is that your characters are usually easy to make. It doesn't take forever to make a character that would fit in with the OSR or with the system that you're playing. In Mausritter, for example, you can make a character in about 2 minutes. And the reason it's so simple to make characters is because you're going to be doing it a lot. Games like Drawsteel want you to fall in love with your characters. They want you to think your characters are awesome. So they make character creation be a whole thing that takes a while. That way it becomes fun to make a character, and then fun to live through the entire adventure as that character. What's essentially happening is they're creating a time sink for you so that you get invested in your character. which means you don't want them to die. In a lot of OSR games, they're doing the opposite. Games like Morkborg, they are trying to make sure that you think it's fun or funny, or the point when your character dies a horrific death, therefore making characters very easy, because he's gonna die, and then you're gonna make a new one, and then they're gonna die, because the dungeon is a meat grinder. And if you're playing an adventure where the dungeon is a meat grinder, but the system isn't, you might spend ages in character creation and get frustrated and annoyed and want to quit when the character dies. So I've got a stack of OSR games here next to me. It's by no means is it all the OSR games, but it's the ones I have on my bookshelf in my house after I've been collecting them for about a year, because I really want 2026 to be the year that I try these games. I'm going to try them all a bit, and I'm going to see what I think. I'm probably largely going to be stealing ideas I like and putting them in my own Frankenstein RPG that I play at this point. But some of them, if I enjoy them, may well turn out to be full adventures or campaigns that I end up doing, if I find the time between the 15 sessions of D&D I'm running this month. So if you're a 5e player and you're wondering, where do I start? There's so many systems. I keep hearing people talk about all these different systems. Which one do I start with? What's my entryway? I'm going to assume you're a 5e player because you're watching this channel. We mostly do videos about 5th edition here, but we also talk about all kinds of game mastery techniques and stuff like that. I think your easiest entry point as a 5e player into the OSR is the archetypical suggestion at this point. I think you should try Shadowdark. This game is essentially what if 5th edition was an OSR game. It's one of the thickest rulebooks I'm going to show off today. It is fairly hefty, but this is all the player characters, all the dungeon crawling rules, all the monsters, all the spells, treasure, magic items, everything you need to run a campaign in Shadowdark. But also you don't need to buy this. And that's usually why this recommendation is the first one off. The quick start rules are free online, and so is the dungeon. You can spend $0 and 0 cents and get the quick start rules for Shadowdark on DriveThruRPG or on the Arcane Library, and then you get along with it the Lost Citadel of the Scarlet Minotaur, which is a 1st to 3rd level dungeon, and is sort of considered by the Shadowdark community to be kind of an archetypical Shadowdark dungeon, and you will get a very good sense of what this game is like without costing you a penny. Which I think is kind of essential if you're going to do something as a test to see whether or not it's something you're interested in. Shadowdark was created by Kelsey Dion, and it was sort of on the back of the OGL crisis when Kelsey, as far as I understand, felt that it was now time for her to finally design her own system. You can watch her YouTube videos on the Arcane Library, and it has a thriving community, I think one of the biggest ones in the OSR space. It's got a very active Discord server that I'm in, and I popped in there to ask questions about starting dungeons, and I got so many recommendations. I will absolutely be playing Shadowdark this year because I think it's really cool. I'm going to try throughout the course of this video tell you about one cool mechanic or system that each of these games does that sets them apart. In Shadowdark, you play in real time. Sort of. Your torches last for an hour in real time. So you want to rush through the dungeon. Not only that, when you're in the dungeon, you're making wandering monster checks. Except if you're in the dark, you automatically fail the check. A main source of time pressure in the Shadowdark RPG is the limited duration of light sources. Don't let light sources be set it and forget it. The characters must protect their light sources and keep them from going out. I think that's really cool. While in total darkness, a creature who's not darkness adapted has disadvantage on tasks it undertakes that require sight. Also, the environment becomes deadly. Deadly is defined as check every hour for wandering monsters. Basically, this is a survival horror game in a dungeon. The reason I recommend it for 5th edition people who are going into the OSR for the first time is because it's a lot like 5th edition if it were stripped down to the bare essentials. What do I mean by that? Well, when attempting a risky action, roll a d20 and add a modifier. That's called making a check. The GM chooses the check linked stat and a number called a difficulty class. If the total of your d20 plus your stat modifier equals or beats the DC, your action succeeds. It uses the same core resolution mechanic as 5th edition, which is not going to be true about many of the other games we're going to talk about today. There is a Dungeon Tube creator that talks about Shadowdark quite a bit. His name is Delver, or Sean. I recommend you go check him out. He does plenty of videos about Shadowdark, and I think you're going to get a huge kick out of him, especially when you start playing through your own Shadowdark adventures. Which brings me to today's sponsor, Under the Shadow of Helfast Spire. This is Bob Worldbuilder's zine of new material designed for use with Shadowdark RPG. It includes classes, monsters, magic items, a setting, and a dungeon. It's a 64-page print and PDF. It's got 30 new magic items, 15 new monsters, and the classes are pretty dope. It's the Berserker, the Mountaineer, the Necromancer, and the Tunneler. And Bob based the dungeons off of real-life accounts from coal miners. So he created the Coal Catacombs, this dungeon that you're going through that is full of actual historical coal horror. I think it's an excellent way for you to check out Shadowdark and dip your feet into the OSR movement. Go check it out. I put a link in the description so they know who sent you. The first OSR system I ever played was not actually an OSR system. I thought it was, and I was wrong. This is Dragonbane. It is a gorgeously illustrated pulp adventure. It's basically like you are heroes fighting monsters, and your life is cheap, but not classically OSR cheap, but you are heroic, and your character sheet is plenty able to solve problems all on its own. This game has a roll under mechanic, which means that you want to roll low, with a natural 1 being called a dragon, being good, and a natural 20 being called a demon, being bad. You can see that's the 20 over here. The 20 looks like demon horns, and the 1 right here looks like a dragon. This took a lot of getting used to for me, being able to celebrate on a natural 1, but here we are. They do this because they want you to know that a high stat is good, therefore a low roll has to be good because you have to roll under the stat to succeed, which means there's no changing how difficult something is. If a player can attempt it, you ask for a roll, they just have to beat their stat. The rulebook is fairly thin, nothing too hefty here, and what I think is really unique about this game is the way they handle monsters. Each monster basically automatically succeeds on whatever it was doing, and many monsters have a table to roll on for the monster attacks. You can see here, this is a list of everything a harpy can do. You just roll to see which attack it's using, and then you do that attack. So instead of having monsters always just sort of hit you and then occasionally using the recharge ability, the harpy could do a threatening cackle, a coordinated attack, death from above, eye gouge, mass attack, or excrement attack. Gross. Stat blocks are very small, so here's a skeleton, and it's got 3 different stat blocks on it. Here's a troll, it's got this sort of monster attack table. All attacks always hit, but what this game does really cleverly is the way it handles initiative. You all have initiative cards, and you could spend your turn ahead of time, if your turn hasn't come up, to use your reaction to defend yourself. A reaction in this case just means you're using your action, but it isn't your turn. So you spend your turn to defend yourself. And the reason I say this game isn't really OSR is because it is basically still a fighting monsters game. It's just a very lightweight one. I think the art is gorgeous. You can play as a duck man. Obviously, I love that. I did have one beef with this game while I was playing it, and it was the amount of optional rules in this book, because I sort of treated this like a starter set. It's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. It's got all these cards for treasure and loot. It's got the dice. It's got these sort of standee miniatures. It comes with a gorgeous poster map. So in terms of getting a full experience out of one box, I think Dragonbane is really good. It's got an adventure, a setting, a whole bunch of monsters, standees, minis. If you buy this box and you don't own any RPG products, I think this is a great first game for someone. My recommendation is just the amount of optional rules. I think you should probably ignore most of them. Precision attack, I think it's called, is pretty good. And the way they handle conditions, I think, is really brilliant. You've got 6 conditions, and each condition is just you have disadvantage on the associated stat. So if you're angry, you have disadvantage on intelligence checks. I think it's really clever. Those 2, I think, were good optional rules. Everything else we tried just muddied the game up a whole bunch. So I say probably start with no optional rules, maybe the one about the conditions, then sort of experiment from there, because I think we kind of got overwhelmed on the amount of optional rules in what I thought was the starter set. I have since learned this is not the starter set, this is just a game. The game is a box. That's really neat. My D&D brained head was just like, oh, it's a box full of stuff, it's a starter set. That wasn't the case. But it is kind of OSR in terms of it being like rules light and fairly easy to make a character. This box comes with pre-made characters, so in terms of bang for buck, I think this is probably the best on the list. The game I'm most excited to play right now is Terran Pounds' Vagabond. They've sponsored the channel a couple of times in the past, but this video isn't sponsored by them. And I'm really excited about this for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is kind of OSR in its sensibilities. It's definitely more about player solving the problem. It's definitely easy to make characters. Character creation is very light in here, but you do get to play heroes. It's pulp fantasy. Life is cheap. It's easy to die, and it's easy to kill the bad guys. So your best case scenario is usually avoiding the fight, but I just think the layout and the art is awesome. I'm pretty sure Terran does most of his design work right in layout. So you get these sort of spreads. This is a whole class. It's the art. This here is a column of how it works. Here are some references for what to think about this and a quote to put you in the right mindset for who this person is. I think there's 12 classes in here. There's a bunch. You can play as a merchant. Look at that. This book has all the spells, all the monsters, all the magic items. I think the only thing that's missing, that's making it a little rough for me to get started, is an adventure. But he did publish one called The Rook and the Crook, which Terran, the designer, describes as a non-Euclidean system-neutral RPG adventure, which sounds awesome. The idea behind a game like this is that it's supposed to be kind of fun and wacky. You're not supposed to get caught up in the rules. You're not supposed to get caught up in whatever should have happened or anything like that. You're just supposed to roll dice and make it quick. And they do the same thing as Dragonbane about stats and like rolling under, but they do roll over. So your stats are probably going to be low, and that's your DC. So you just have your DC for succeeding on your character sheet. And if I were to give one recommendation on how to get started on this, I'd recommend checking out Terran's channel in Destructo Boy. But also Deficient Master did a really cool video where a bunch of wizards from different editions fought each other, and you can watch Terran, the designer of Vagabond, play his wizard in that fight. And you're going to get a really good sense of how it works, and it's just going to look like a lot of fun, and I think it's because it is. Now, full disclosure, I haven't tried this yet. I'm hoping Terran's going to run it for me at Gen Con, or I might be able to find a time to play in between now and then. But this is the one I'm most excited about. This is the cleanest designed one, the easiest to understand so far for me, and it's very evocative. Everything in here just gets me really excited. And before I move on from Vagabond, let me show you how it works with magic. How the spell casting works. This is, I think, the coolest spell casting system I've seen in an RPG. This is the initial page on spell casting. You can see here it describes how it works, and here it's got this diagram of like a wizard, and the cone, and the line, and the sphere. Well, turns out, in Vagabond, every spell you know is a cantrip. You can cast Disintegrate as a cantrip. It just targets one creature, does a little bit of damage, and if it kills them, it disintegrates them. But what if you wanted to do extra damage? You spend mana to upgrade it, or to change the effect. In that Wizard Wars video that Deficient Master did, Terran cast Disintegrate as an AoE, spent a bunch of mana to do it, and disintegrated everyone in an area. You can decide to turn any spell into a concentration spell by spending mana, and then you have to focus on it, which is basically concentration. I think that's so cool. It's so flexible, and I cannot wait to play a wizard in this system. The spell list is fairly short, but it seems so evocative to me that because each of these spells basically has 30 or 40 different ways you can cast them, I cannot see getting bored as a wizard in this system. So this is the one I'm most excited about out of everything I'm going to show you today. I don't think you're going to get very far into the OSR space before we talk about the elephant in the room. That is this. And if I said that sometimes these games are nostalgic, sometimes they're punk, this is the most punk. I think Vagabond is plenty punk. I don't think Vagabond is particularly nostalgic about anything, really. Maybe sort of Metzner basic. But other than that, it seems to me largely to be a new take on the OSR gaming sphere by a new creator, a new game designer. This almost seems obscenely punk to me in a way that I think is kind of fascinating, but also I'm not sure it appeals to me, but I know it appeals to a lot of people, so I'm going to show it off because I think it's really cool, even though I'm not sure I'll be playing it this year. I'll get to it eventually, but there's a lot of games around me right now, and there are others I'm slightly more excited about personally. Don't come after me in the comments, please, because this is fascinating. Every single spread of this book is a piece of art. The layout is bar none beautiful. It is top of the line beauty. I like Vagabond's layout more because I can understand it. But look at this. If looking at this doesn't make you want to run the game, I don't know what will. Let me show you the goblin monster stat block. Here it is. This is the goblin monster. This one here. You can see here it describes a curse all goblins carry. It's got tiny little pink lettering underneath here. I don't know that the camera's going to pick it up. There it is. Where it says how many hit points they have, what kind of damage they do, and their special traits. It has bounties on it describing how much silver you get if you kill this monster and bring its body parts back to town. And it's got this, here's the Wraith, a Lich. Here's an undead doll called Lady Porcelain. This game is almost sort of just comedically horrific. I think it's kind of like a horror comedy game. And I would be fascinated to get an opportunity to play this as a player run by someone familiar with it, like Salty Nick, or any other sort of OSR-minded experienced dungeon master. This here is the weapon spread. You can see flail, crossbow, Zweihanda, it says along the bottom. Here you can see how much damage a femur does, 1d4. And then here you can see all the different swords as having been stuck in this person and how much damage they do. I feel like every page is trying to both amaze me and make me laugh, and that makes this a lot of fun to read in a way that I have a tough time wrapping my head around it because I get so distracted by all the awesome stuff in here. Whereas in Vagabond, I feel like all the layout is in service to me understanding the game. So these are both the kind of more punk-style games, and this one's almost comedically punky, whereas this one is kind of laissez-faire, irreverent about the nostalgia involved. Kind of like they miss the idea of the things in those old editions, but not the actual parts of it. So those are my thoughts on the two. I don't mean to be harping on mean to Morkborg. I think it's amazing. And there are so many types of these games now. There's a Pirate Borg, and my favorite pun name of them all, Cyborg. You can play them in the future and then Age of Sail, and they're all meant to be sort of gross and horrific, but also funny. So I really look forward to trying this one out and discovering what I actually think about it, because right now I think my thoughts are only half formed and mostly ignorant. Speaking of mostly ignorant, I don't have the player's book for this. My local game store only has the referee's tome, which got the magic items and stuff in it. I don't really know what to tell you about OSC, except for the fact that this feels very much to me like someone who's excited about a D&D instead of basic D&D, like Vagabond is. So if this is your sort of basic D&D nostalgia with a bit of punk labeled in, I think this here is your AD&D nostalgia, and it's far less punky. It cleans up all the stat blocks, the pages are far more readable compared to AD&D, but the art is very much that sort of AD&D style. Check out this troll, look at that. Occasionally you'll get sort of splashes of color art in the middle of the book, and I think those look really good. But most of the art in here is that kind of black and white, old school pencil sketch stuff. But so far, I'm mostly skeptical on this being for me, even though I find looking through it kind of fascinating, especially in that sort of old school, adventurers rummaging through tombs and getting treasure back to town. Now, I saved the two most flavorful games for last. I'm going to start by saying this one here is Mothership, which I looked into. I think the box set kind of left me a little bit confused, mostly because I didn't know what each of the rules manuals did. So if you find yourself in the same situation, don't make my mistake. Just read the back of the box. It explains everything. I just did not think to do that because I'm not that smart. I'm a little dumb boy. It comes with these 4 manuals on running the game. Unconfirmed Contact Reports is basically your monster manual. Warden's Operation Manual is your DMG. Player Survival Guide is the player book, and then there is a book on running spaceships, because this game is all about going to space. That's right, you can do OSR in space, why not? This game treats life cheaply, so it's very easy to die, and it is quite apparently frequent that player characters die in this. And it's a survival horror game on board a spaceship, and a spaceship's basically a dungeon in space. So I think it's kind of a perfect fit for OSR style play, especially if you don't want to do the classic sort of dungeon crawling stuff. And this may be the right kind of difference. If your players are used to playing 5e, and then you go, we're going to do more fantasy, but this time you all die, that might be a weird sort of thing in your player's head going, why is this one so different? So if you need like an in-universe excuse for changing things up, going to outer space where everyone is a character in the Alien movie and then everyone dies at the end may feel like an easier bridge for you. But I think I'm not going to do much more of a review on this. If you want to actually know about this game, there's a much better review out there. I'm going to recommend you go watch out Quinn's Quest for some good content and have a hear about what he has to say about this, because I think it's just going to be way more enlightening. He even interviewed the creator and game designer. And I've saved my favorite for last, Mausritter. Mouse meaning mouse, and Ritter meaning knight. It's German, yeah. This is a fascinating game, and if you just look at the cover art and the booklets, you might not think that it's OSR, because it's all like cute mice fighting monsters. Like, look at that. There's a little mouse in here, and you open it up. There's a big owl. Ain't that cool? But the thing is, this is basically an OSR game. Basically, it is. It is very OSR. Because making a mouse only takes a couple of minutes. This is the entire spread on character creation. That's it. Your mouse is just, I would say a dude, but no, it's a mouse. You've got an inventory system. Many of these games have one, but I thought I'd highlight this one. It's just got like slots and then the stuff you have here. And you literally run your character using like little inventory tokens. These are empty ones. But here is one for a pit purse, which is like your money. Pit purse. I don't know if you can see that, but there it is. Here's a pole arm called a hook arm. It's just a fishing hook. Ain't that cute? And if you take a condition, say, for instance, you become hungry, then you go grab the condition sheet, you take the token on it, and you break it off, and then you put this in your inventory, because being hungry is going to reduce the size of your inventory. That's what all the conditions do. And I think this one's fantastic. You've got little chits and play pieces that you can put on your character sheet. It comes with this excellent character sheet flip book notebook thing of just like a whole bunch of character sheets, all the conditions that I just showed you, and a 3-fold paper adventure. This one's called Honey in the Rafters. This is how big it is. That's how simple it is. Look at that. And this is enough to run a whole session, maybe half a session, a short session. And there is one expansion for Mausritter that I'm aware of. There might be more actually, called The Estate, which is a setting filled with a bunch more adventures. So you can easily expand your Mausritter adventures onto the estate and then run all of that. And in here, they teach you how to make hex crawls. They bring with it a hex crawl with a bunch of seeds for adventure. So you could run the estate and then expand it using the Earldom of Eck, which is the Earldom in the Mausritter box set. And I think that's enough for you to play Mausritter for a whole year. And I'm really excited. I already played one session of Mausritter, kind of. We played for about 20 minutes from character creation to TPK, because I ran it wrong. And I think that's sort of a good lesson about OSR games in general. In Mausritter, rolling initiative is usually bad news, and that's kind of typical of OSR-style games. Once you roll initiative, characters might die. So the best way to play is to never roll initiative, never start any fights. You have to win the fights before they start. And I kind of ran it like a 5th edition DM. It was late at night and I'd already had a drink. So I just said, hey, there was a mice underneath the table, roll initiative, and then they all died. You shouldn't do that. So when I run it properly again, hopefully in a couple of weeks, I'm going to make sure not to do that. Make sure to telegraph the fights well ahead of time, give the players plenty of time to prepare, set down traps, that kind of thing, and let those traps and things just kind of automatically work. Those are all the OSR style games I have here at Mystic Art Studios, but there's a whole bunch more. First off, there's Into the Odd by Chris McDowell. There is Ben Milton's Knave. If you're not familiar with Ben Milton, he runs the YouTube channel Questing Beast, which if you want someone who's actually into the OSR to explain the differences between these games to you, Ben's got videos on I think everything I talked about today, so go check out his channel. There's Deathbringer by Professor Dungeon Master. There's Index Card RPG by Runehammer. And I know MCDM has just started developing their own kind of dungeon crawly game that doesn't seem to be very OSR-y. It's more modern game. It uses 2d6 add modifier, but it is very much go into dungeons, collect loot, inventory as health. You take wounds to your inventory in that system. So I really look forward to seeing what James Introcaso is going to be doing with Crows. And Crows, what a perfect name, right? The idea that dungeons are like carcasses of an old world, and the adventurers are crows that go and pick at the body to get their shinies and their loot. I think it's just perfect. But also I'm making this video not really because I am now an OSR YouTuber. I'm gonna go play these games over the course of the year. I'm gonna try as many of them as I can. Probably going to try some of them at Gen Con, which I'm going to Gen Con, by the way. See you folks there. But I still love my 5th edition, and I think I'm going to keep playing 5th edition. And I think what I'm liking about a lot of these games are things that I'm going to try and put into my own 5th edition game. And I've begun doing that already, and I've been doing that now for a while. Obviously, we've got the dungeoneering rules that we made on Patreon, the hexploration rules, both systems that let you go explore dungeons, go explore hexes, and sort of treat 5th edition as a more of a classic play for loot, play for treasure kind of game, and sort of trying to mod 5th edition into that direction. Obviously, certain things about 5th edition you can't change with a simple mod add-on, but we do those mod add-ons because our group still wants to be playing 5e. But if you want to try a new system, you can do that. You can try any of these games. So far, my recommendations would be that if you are a 5e player and you're looking to change as little as possible, I would suggest you try Shadowdark. If you're willing to play a game that is slightly different, but is very simple to understand, and I think you'll get a huge kick out of the magic system and stuff like that, I would recommend you try out Vagabond. And obviously Mausritter has a special place in my heart on account of there being tiny little cute mice. If you're not sure about this whole OSR thing and you just want to try making your current 5e game a little more OSR-like, I recommend you check out our dungeoneering or exploration rules on the Patreon. If you're on there, you'll also be able to catch our bonus videos like Daði's Diaries, Game Tales. We've started an actual play that we're now trying to release every other week on there. Obviously, you've also got our Adept membership where you're going to catch things like the dungeoneering rules, exploration rules, and the broadsheet, my setting as individual magazines of setting information, adventures, character optimization, classes, species, and things like that. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. Thanks so much for watching this video. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend, and if you're feeling especially generous, you might like this video, comment, share, and subscribe to hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.